So my story basically goes that I grew up in Southern Africa. I was a relatively good endurance athlete. I wasn't elite, but I was, you know, when I ran a race with 15,000 people and I finished in the top 100. So I was still an hour and a half behind the winner, but I was still within the top 100. So that's kind of where I was. And some of you will know who Tim Noakes is. And Tim Noakes was like my hero, and he wrote this thing called The Law of Running, and 2/3 of the thing was about how you have to have carbohydrates and all the different ways that you need to load on carbohydrates during your training, and especially before you're about to race. And that was my Bible. And I would get exquisitely fit for some of these races. And 3 days before, I would go on this carbohydrate loading regime, and I would feel like absolute crap on the day of the race. And I could never, ever work it out. And I actually thought, I ran 10 of them. And I thought it was because I got nervous. I thought it was because my nerves were turning me into this dithering idiot. And that was why on the day of the race, I was standing there thinking, I've got to run up that hill for 90 Ks. That's just under 55 miles. And I'm feeling like I can't even run to the corner. And but then also what happened was that as I got older and I got into my later 40s, I started to put on weight. And I didn't grow a paunch or anything, I just started to thicken. And running became harder, I started to get injured all the time, and I got to a point where I got on the scale and I was 35 pounds over my ideal weight that I used to weigh 20 years before when I was running like this. And I was horrified. I thought, how the hell did this happen to me? And I was trying to go out running every day, and I felt like a slug. It was terrible. And just at that time, you know how things sometimes work out? It worked out that somebody sent me an email about the ketogenic diet. And I'll be honest with you, this is 3 years ago now. I did not even know what a ketone was at that stage. I don't know why, but I had never even heard of ketosis or ketone or anything. But the email came about an alternative energy to glucose. And as an athlete who was really struggling at that time, I thought, I got to read about this. And I started to research it, spent 3 weeks. I don't think I got any work done. But by the end of it, I realized that it explained absolutely everything. It explained what I was experiencing then, which I now understand that I developed insulin resistance and basically the metabolic syndrome. But not only that, but it also explained all these issues that I had when I was running well and I was really fit and I thought I was invincible. And I realized that if I had known what I know now, I wouldn't have had those terrible experiences at the beginning of those races. And so I started on this diet, and it was like really quiet because you don't want to, and I think a lot of you have experienced this, you don't want to tell anybody that you're doing it because it's so against the grain. And about 3 months into it, when I was really starting to see benefits, the weight was coming off, I was running again, inflammation in my knees had cleared up, I was feeling brilliant. I was on the phone to my parents back in South Africa, and eventually we fessed up and I started telling her about this because I was excited and I was feeling so good. And she said, that sounds like the Tim Noakes thing. And because I'd been away for so long, I didn't know that he had been converted in the meantime, right? And when I heard that, I thought, I was on my laptop while I was still talking to her on the phone, looking it up. And they call it banting in South Africa. And now it just reinforced everything that I had learned and what I was trying to implement for my own life. And it was my birthday in January. It had been 6 months. I'd lost the 35 pounds. I was down to the weight that I used to weigh when I was 30. When I was running, and I wasn't running. I was running every day a little bit, but not the 100 miles a week that I was doing back when I was 30. And I was weighing that same weight that I was back then. So don't let anybody ever tell you that as you get older, you put on weight and that's just the way it is. It's nonsense. And we were sitting there, and I'd heard about the stuff that was going on in South Africa. In Sweden, they've adopted it as kind of pseudo as their dietary guidelines. In Australia, they've got low carb down under. And I thought, having learned everything that I'd learned in the last 6 months, I kind of feel like we're responsible here for inflicting this whole thing on the world. That Ansel Keys and the McGovern Commission in 1977 and the US dietary guidelines that were implemented at that stage, if you look at what happened in the world, the entire, at least the English-speaking world, by 1980, were all adopting that same way of eating and that same mantra. And I feel like to some extent, we as Americans have a responsibility in that. And I looked around at what's going on here, and there's these little conferences going on, but it's like this bubble of believers that go from conference to conference, right? And I said, we got to get beyond that. We have to find a way to reach people that are not already being reached. We don't want to preach to the choir anymore. And I was pounding my hand. I said to Pam, we need to put 1,000 people in the room. And I thought, San Diego's vacation destination, let's try and do this. And I wrote to a couple of, the next day I got up, it was almost, I just got up and started doing it. And I wrote to Gary Taubes and a couple of core speakers, and I thought, if I can get these guys, I've got a core to build on and I've got something. And Jimmy Moore is talking after me, and he was he answered me back in 10 minutes. Said, what can I do to help? And I said, okay, well, I don't know anybody in this space. I know how to put on conferences, but I'd never even been to a low-carb conference. And so the big thing that Jimmy did for me was introduce me to a bunch of different speakers. Gary Taubes wrote back to me and insisted that he have an interview with me to find out if I knew what I was doing and everything. But by the end of an hour on the phone with him, and if you guys know what he charges for an hour of his time, I was really nervous. But at the end of it, he said, okay, if you do this, I'll be there and I'll come and talk. And I put the phone down and I looked at Pam. She was standing in the hallway listening to this conversation. And I looked at her and I said, shit, we got to do this now. And that's how it started. Whenever I introduce him, when he speaks at at the conferences that he comes to, I always say, if it wasn't for him agreeing to come and talk, I don't think we'd all be here. And what was the most amazing was every time I reached out to these speakers, how they are all passionate about trying to get this word out. And if somebody is trying to do that in some way, they throw their weight behind it 100%. And for those of you who haven't been to one of these conferences before or whatever, you'll see through this weekend the community that we're starting to build and the friendships and I don't know what it is. Even the hotel tells us this is they have thousands of events every year, and the hotel staff says this is by far the best crowd they've ever had at a conference. And it's I think Pam said, yeah, eating cream and butter makes people happy or something, right? But it's true. There's something about it. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's just because I think we're all flabbergasted that it's. I can't believe I went for 50 years that I didn't know any of this information, and so when you do learn about it and you realize how amazing it is, all you want to do is tell someone else about it, and I guarantee you that there's a bunch of people in this room and a bunch of people that haven't made it yet that are coaches or hope to be coaches or in some way are trying to teach people about this. And it's because, the same as us, they feel inspired by the fact that they've gone through this massive transformation, and so now they feel obliged to tell their friends and tell other people about it and help other people to experience what they experienced. And one of the things that happened for me that I didn't know about and I've only kind of learned about later was when I was 22 or so, I had a huge motor vehicle accident and massive brain trauma. And I've come to understand now that what I suffered was a very severe traumatic brain injury. And there are two major things that came out of that for me. And one was my exactly what's happening to me now, my struggle to find words sometimes. It's even very simple words. And I'm like clutching there. I'm trying, and I know it's like right here, but it doesn't come to me. And it's not like it's these really complicated, difficult, fancy words that I just learned about the other day. This is something I've been using my whole life. And the other thing is my ability, or not ability, my, can't think of the word again, but what happens to me is that if I get interrupted, then I get very grumpy if people interrupt me when I'm talking. And the reason for that is that I'm so focused on what I'm trying to say, it's because if I get distracted in the slightest, I suddenly can't remember what I'm saying anymore. And what's happened to me since I started this diet is that it hasn't gone away, but it has improved immensely for me. And there's absolutely no way before I started this diet that I could stand up here and do this. But anyway, I don't normally tell people this part. And the reason I'm doing it now is because at the last event, I was actually introducing Georgia Eid. And she's talking about something else at this event, but she was talking particularly there about Alzheimer's and the effect on the brain. And I was trying to introduce her, and I got completely lost. I forgot what I was saying, and eventually I just said, Georgia Eid, and I walked off the stage. And when I got back up again, I told the story, and I explained, the fact that I've had this brain injury, and please forgive me if that happens again. And I just said to them, and I'll say the same to you, so if I just stop and go blank and look at you like a deer in the headlights, someone down here just remind me who I am and what I'm doing up here. And hopefully it'll come back, and otherwise I'll just say David and just walk off the stage, right? Okay, but and I think one of the things about being up here, even though I'm very afraid of this, is the fact that that's part of, and Georgia will talk about this as well, is that it's the fact that I don't fear that as much anymore. It's happened to me already now while I'm talking to you, but it doesn't freak me out. I think partly because I know that this is such a nice, accommodating crowd, but on the other side, I've just calmed down, and she'll tell you that about people, that this lifestyle seems to be less intense on the brain. And on your moods and stuff like that, and the people somehow seem to be more relaxed and in a better place. And I think that's part of it. It's not that I don't forget what I'm saying and that I can find all the words that I'm looking for, but it's just that I'm not afraid of it. And those are major benefits that I've experienced from this lifestyle that I had no idea that I was going to experience when I set out on this. I had no idea. So that's my story. Pam, you here? Come up here. Okay, so this is just to introduce, since I was asked to introduce us, she's the better half of this relationship. Okay, and her sign there says the boss. Okay, so I think most of you probably met her when you came to register. If you have any issues, don't talk to me, talk to her. Okay, but honestly, she works tirelessly to help me, and the two of us basically run this whole thing. We have some volunteers that help us at the events, but outside of that, we do the whole thing. And it's completely bootstrapped, and we're still struggling to get to a point where it's paying for itself and we're putting money in, but it's something that we believe in so profoundly that That's what keeps us going. And when we hear the stories of the people that come to us and tell us how it's changed their lives and how much of a difference it's made to their families or whatever, those are the things that make us want to come back and do this again. And so one of the things that we got comments about even during registration last night was like, I only heard about this just the other day. Why don't you guys advertise? It's like, oh my God. Do you have any idea how much time? That's all we do is try to get this message out to people, to tell them these events are on and come and join us. You know, come at least get the live stream, whatever. Just come and learn. But people, it's so difficult to reach people. And I think that the way it's really got to happen is that with you people who are saying, oh, why don't we advertise more? We need you to go and tell people about it. We need you to spread the word and go home and tell people how amazing. You know, I promise you, by the end of this weekend, you will go away with having had an amazing experience. But don't leave it at that. Go and tell everybody you know. Go and tell the world. Go and shout it from the rooftops. Bring your friends back next time. Tell your friends about the one in San Diego in July, the new one that we're doing in San Francisco in November. 2019, we hope to do one in either New York or Washington. But tell people about it. I think that, I don't know if it's been scrolling on here, but there's some hashtags that we're hoping you guys are going to use. Maybe you can put them up. So go on the social media and tell your followers about it. Like, write about it. Do Facebook Lives outside. And that will bring me to a thing now. We are going to make all the slide decks available to everybody afterwards in a Dropbox. So there is no need to take pictures of the screen, okay? It's being streamed, it's being videoed. There's absolutely no streaming from your phones or videos on your side, please. But once you get outside, you can go wild, okay? Post as much as you can, do Facebook Lives, take videos, do whatever you want. Give our vendors as much exposure as you can, because they are the reason that we're able to do this. And that we only have to put a little bit of money into it. And that hopefully by next year, we won't even be putting money into it. And then we can start doing the projects that we want to do for the Max Love Foundation. And these, you know, there's just so many things we want to do, but we have to start earning the money first. Okay? So if any of you want to take a picture, do a check-in, something like that, go for it. You've got 5 minutes before Jimmy comes up, and then put your phones off. If you need to answer your phone, if you've got it on buzz or something in your pocket, it's something really urgent, then please go out the door and take it outside. Okay? We've got a lot of spacing between the events. This is much more laid back than any of the other conferences we do. There's a lot more time to ask questions of the speakers, and there's more time between the talks. So there's plenty of time to go to the bathroom in between. So if it's possible to hold it for that 45 minutes or half an hour until the end, please rather do that than get up in the middle. But if you really have to get out, then try and do it quietly. Respect everybody else that is trying to listen. Push out of the door quietly and try to make sure that it closes quietly behind you.
I think the carpet's going to help that door close quietly. And watch your step over the cable, because we had to line that cable across. So just watch your step. Last thing, to go back, I just posted the live stream, a little bit of an advertisement that the live stream has started just in the last few minutes. If you wouldn't mind going to the LowCarbUSA Facebook page and sharing that, maybe more people will see it. And even if they start late, they'll still have access to the live stream for over the next 3 weeks. So if they've missed Doug's introduction, or they missed Jimmy's talk, who's coming up next, or they missed David Diamond, who will be after that, they can still go back and watch it for 3 weeks. So anybody who starts it all throughout the weekend will still have the ability to go back and see any of the talks that they missed. So please share. It would be great. Thanks.
Okay. So also something about the wines. Tonight and tomorrow night, there's going to be wine tasting at the end of the hallway there where the dry farm wines are. After the last talk at 6 o'clock until supper at 7:30, the wine tasting would be on, and then at dinner, you guys are all invited. It's all included in your ticket, and the wine in there is free too. There's a cash bar for everything else, but the wine is free. Okay, and yeah, it's amazing stuff. And if you're nervous about it, then go and learn about it and understand that it's something that you can do on this diet if you drink the right stuff. So awesome partners. One other thing, ButcherBox, who are not here, but they are one of the sponsors that help us do this. They sent us stuff that got tied up in the weather, and so it only arrived late last night. But so some of you had in your goodie bags have a ticket from the ButcherBox that do grass-fed beef and organic chickens and pork and all of that stuff. Amazing company as well. And that little ticket gives you quite a good discount on your first order. So if you didn't...
Free bacon with every delivery.
Yeah, and they're adding free bacon to every delivery. Yeah, check at this. Right? So, but we didn't influence it. They just did it on their own. Free bacon this whole year on every order that you do. An amazing group to support if you can. If you didn't get one in your bag, because we only got it late last night, so if you registered last night or early this morning or whatever, if you didn't get one in your bag, you can pick one up at the desk.